something.
What is this? You can see me, right?
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you, Ericka, because we are live. So you are here and we are ready to start our next panel. I am super excited about this because these ladies are the core of every organization. They make sure that we've got talent in, we're recruiting, we're training, we're protecting. And that's why I call it the TPP program, the Talent Protection Program, that these ladies make sure that when they're recruiting and sourcing and all of that, that they're making sure that it is done in the right way. So I'm super excited to introduce to you to our panelists. Again, I'm Adrienne C. Smith, the founder of the Can Diversity Collective, and this is our Inkwell Beach virtual session for 2021. Our panelists today are Love Malone from The Gradient. Shout out to Love. We have Ericka Riggs from OSMG. Did I say that right?
OSMG, that's it.
OSMG. And Arnicia Arrington from
Wondros.
Wondros. And these ladies are going to talk to us about talent because it's all about the talent. It's all about the people who make up these organizations. And there's, it's not an easy job, but it is an easy job if people do what they're supposed to do, right? So I'm going to let any one of you ladies step in and just say, what's it about? Even when you have the question, Arnicia, of like, what does TPP mean? Like, what is she saying? What are your thoughts about the Talent Protection Program? What are the best steps in thought, logic, the best logical thoughts around protecting the talent?
Oh, yeah. I mean, right.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ericka. Go ahead.
I wanted to say with that whole thing, there's talent right here on this particular panel that I am most honored to be a part of. I love what you're doing, Adrienne. In spite of having a full-time job, you're also, doing all of these other passion projects. And Arnicia, who I've known through the music industry and so forth, and Love, I mean, really just creating the change that she wanted to see. And I have benefited from knowing each and every one of you all. So I just wanted to start that up front.
Oh, thank you, Ericka.
Yes, thank you. And kudos to you for finding a way and making a way.
Yeah,
you definitely. This
you
is
do
a
a
love
lot
everybody. Okay, Arnicia, we're turning it to you.
Okay, so what I was going to say about that is I love the TPP. And right now, I think it's a good time to find talent because of everything that's going on in the world. This is the best time for me. But also, it's a challenge because, people have lost jobs now. Things are reopening and people are looking for jobs now. So it's also hard to keep your talent. And so one of the things that I try to do is look at, make sure our benefits and those things that people care about is up to par. Everybody loves money, right? Everybody loves money. But you can't always just throw money at people because sometimes people are like, okay, well, where was this money last year when I really needed it? So for me, it's really about a conversation. It's about their career path and where they can go within the organization. And if there's anything there, because some people they want to stay with the organization. They just want to be able to grow. And I find a lot of times companies don't make room for that piece, the career development. So for me, I think it has a lot to do with benefits and everything when I say benefits, and also their career, their career development. So that's what I do. Those are the type of conversations that I have, and I make myself accessible to the employees.
Love it. Love, I'm going to go over to you. What does TPP mean to you?
I think the protection part is the most important. I think allies are great, but we need to also protect people. And I think I like the idea of the program and the fact of us looking at not only protecting talent inside of an organization. So it's like, how are you working with each other? But then also, how are you protecting talent outside? And that's about us having conversations like about salary, what you should be getting. What are the other things that are, that, because sometimes we're only looking at the salary, we're not looking at the package that, actually creates wealth, and making sure you're doing that. So just being able to protect one another so that doesn't, we're not losing there. But the biggest thing is even now, so, we're talking about diversity here, but, we have to protect all diversity, right? So we were talking about Black Lives Matter, and people, a lot of companies, would call me and be like, hey, love, we're looking for some Black people. And that's awesome, right? However, sometimes it didn't benefit the other diverse groups, because it wasn't about, sometimes when they laid off, like let's say Hispanics or women or things like that, they were bringing in other, and sometimes it was like the carousel. So it wasn't like they were creating diversity, they were replacing other people who were diverse and just moving us around. I call it the diversity carousel. So we need to speak out about that. Just because you see, one new face, doesn't mean that we can't be missing the other diversity that was there. So we need to protect each other. I can't remember it was a priest that said this during about the Holocaust. When they came from one group, no one said anything. When they came from another group, and then at some point there was no one left. And so we all have to protect each other. When we're talking about diversity, not just one group, we all need to, I think people always say Black Lives Matter, but, we end up speaking for everyone. Everyone was out there marching. It was important. And then they're looking at making sure that when we're back in the workforce, that we're looking around, not just with getting more Black people, absolutely, but also looking at making sure people that are disabled are still having voices, people that are LGBTQ have voices and things like that, and that they're present. Latino, we just got to make sure that we're protecting everyone. So I like that protect. So we're not going into our silos and we're just, when, the other time comes, we're on that bandwagon and no one else exists, So it's like, let's all rise together. So I like the ideal of this program, because we're looking at all tides rising together, so that it's about in advertising, it representing, their entire, I just lost the word. I keep saying clients all day, but I guess their entire client pool. And you want to make sure that it's representative. And if, your clients look all different, then so should the people working for you. So I do like the protection idea inside and out.
Love that.
I love that.
It's on you now, Ericka. What does the TPP mean to you?
Yeah, I really do love what you just said. And I'm glad you mentioned how we all must get together. One of the, what it means to me is, when I think about this year, I think about how I've never heard the HBCU mentioned so much, and yet not nuanced. I think about how AAPI has not only made me an ally, but it's also made me an ally that's learning and sensitive to other allies that don't quite know exactly what to say. And it's also made me realize that if we don't all do this together, then there's this a notion of tokenism that can water down somewhat your welcoming or your onboarding, where you feel more tokenized than you do. And I think the word used to be, your diversity hire. Some people will say that doesn't matter, but I really think that because D&I is business centric, that, let's not title it. Let's get in and recognize that we all have these magical gifts to give. And let's go about the business of making business really about that. And truly, talent, without talent, you have no business. We don't have robots yet that replace all of us, right? So talent is one of those, it's near and dear to me. I love developing it. I love sourcing it. I am a proud HBCU attendee. However, I know that Howard and Spelman and Morehouse, they're more. They're Lincolns. There's Talladega. There's so many more. And so why not then go to the source, to places like UNCF? Why not create more understanding and context with relationships like the Thurgood Marshall Foundation, so that we can really start sourcing and utilizing, and at the same time, creating sustainable models, because those organizations have been really limping along the way, trying to keep these institutions open. So yes, I love it. I love the protection of it. I love talking about how we bring in all voices. And then once they're there, let's value them. Let's not see them in one sense, all things Black come to Ericka, all things Asian go to, let's not do that. Let's really try to start to understand how we fit into this context of this, cornucopia of thought. So I'm down. I'm down for the discussion.
Thank you all for your perspectives. And this is what I've taken out of it. That's what's important is looking internally. Arnicia, you brought that up. Externally, Love, you talked about that. And then the sourcing, Ericka, I think that was your focus. So let's dig down a little deeper. We'll go back to you, Love. When you talk about external, which I think taps into like pipelining, it taps into creating pathways, looking and building relationships with this new talent and how to get them in. What are some recommendations that you have when you think about externally strengthening that base? I always talk about how we met through a program at the Howard University Center for Excellence in Advertising, looking at external talent and helping build that pathway and pipeline for new talent in a different way. And then making sure you had relationships with people. Give us some more perspective on, you don't have to talk specifically about that, but what you've done and how you're creating ways for external talent to get in and protect that talent too.
No, that's a great question. I think, well, first, I kind of feel like the Howard program and Forays was like yesterday, and we were trying to solve having more diverse talent be senior level. And we're talking about, that was 10 years ago. And that particular program brought in, CAN winners and, people that are very senior leaders now. So what I would say, how do companies start to look at diversity? If you've been doing something the same way, don't double down on it if you're not getting results. You wouldn't do that for other divisions of your companies. Don't do that. The next thing, talk to the actual talent and ask them what they want. I love when I'm in a meeting and there's a bunch of white guys sitting around the table deciding because they have like a Black friend, supposedly, that has given them some insight on what we want. We need to put everyone at the table and ask them what they want. I mean, I tell people I'm pretty clear about, I don't need to be in another room for people to teach me how to be Black. I'm actually pretty good at it. I've been doing it a long time. I'm good at it. So I think the big thing is for companies to start asking what they want. The one thing that we did, so I want to stick with the companies first, asking what people want and then giving incentives for them to do it. There are agencies that actually give people like, a bonus if they bring in talent, put some money behind it. But I also tell them to also talk about the benefits. When I was at Ogilvy and BBDO during my career, one of the things I didn't wait for someone to ask me. And I was like, oh, there's not enough people that look like me. I brought in people or advocated for people that would come in higher than me and lower than me. What a better way to build a team around you, besides to actually bring in people. At Ogilvy, they actually had a bonus at the time. So I actually did a summer vacation on bringing in people. And don't get offended when they ask you, like, hey, do you know anyone? Like I do, I brought in white people, Black people, Asian people. When money came in, I was like, you didn't specifically say Black people. So here's this person, enjoy them, So, try to get involved and don't just complain about, you don't see talent like you, bring them in. Start talking to, HR and the talent recruiters. Talk to the people who are doing, the freelancing and say, hey, I'm going to bring somebody in. That's how advertising works. Most of the people who get in know somebody that's there. That's how they got in. So we've got to do a better job in the diversity groups to not be the only one and think that there's some pride around that. If you're the only one, shame on you because you didn't try to bring in other people. Now, if you say I've tried to bring in 7 people and they said no, and I'm the only one, leave. because they don't value your opinion. Next. So on the other end, I would say what we do, when I was inside, I did that. But what I want to do on the outside was to create something that was for everyone, but then also have data around it. So the Gradient is really very simply a place where talent can come in and find jobs that are actively available in the creative industry. So, you know, we have had jobs with Estee Lauder, we have jobs with Apple right now on there, Wildcard, which does all the movie promotions, and just to name a few. So we always have jobs. BBDO just hired someone off the Gradient just literally last week. So we have jobs that come in all the time, and from senior level to entry level. And the goal is that you don't need to know someone at Apple. You just need to know, get on the Gradient and we'll push you. You just have to put your portfolio in, give a call to the team. We like talking to people. And if there's something available, we want you to get that job. We keep the prices low so that money goes back to you. So we want to make sure don't get lowball because we're not charging. So take that on your fee, and make sure that they're not like, well, we have to pay a recruiter. Maybe you didn't. Let's talk and make sure you're getting the best price for your work and your worth. So I hope I answered it, but those two are the things I would like companies to start look at. But I think talent, we need to not wait for someone to do something for us because they haven't and they ain't, or they're going to keep giving us the same solutions. So we had all this uprise, all this promise of money, all these things happen. And what's different?
Good point. What is different? And, Ericka, you talked about the sources and resources, and for brands and agencies to think differently about resourcing and finding talent, which means that there has to be a stronger investment in it, whether it's investing in an organization like the Gradient or investing in reaching out and expanding kind of your circle. We know there are 103 HBCUs, but as you mentioned, there's a whole bottom tier of HBCUs that create incredible talent that organizations to tap into. Talk a little bit more about other alternatives in terms of whether sororities, fraternities. What do you know about those resource groups that organizations can tap into?
So, I think this is one of those think out the box. I think oftentimes I've heard people in our industry really create a job description that is so specific that they don't understand that there are transferable skill sets that can really be helpful. As a matter of fact, I feel like it can be an advantage. I come from entertainment, music, and nonprofit. So being in my position now, it allows me to bring in all of those wonderful relationships that I've built on the outside, right? So let's talk about those. One of the main sources of building talent, especially when we're talking about the Black community, is we started a little too late. I feel like we need to start partnering more with high school education. We need to, and there are programs that are doing that. So find out. There's, I know Delta Theta Sorority, they have a program that my daughter was a part of when I believe she was in middle school. And they help to basically, be that show and tell, if you will, to professional careers. I know 100 Black men do that. There are so many programs like that really, because this industry is so short of the awareness of what this industry is about, we could even start there. Because what that does is, my daughter was in one particular program at Deutsch. And from that one summer program she was a part of, she has already made up her mind what type of school, what type of major. That's where we need to start inspiring people to start understanding, because they need to recognize once they get to college, they have a pathway. Pathways are also very important for us to create. You can start to inspire and create the pathway to the industry. Therefore, we have, although people will say we don't have an entry-level problem, I think that's called sustainability. So it might not be a problem, but I think it needs to definitely continue, and it needs to be sustainable, because we need to be able to provide replacements as we push the people who are now at entry level into mid-level, and mid-level then into executive level.
I love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so there are many programs, and that's what a really good diversity intention leader in your company should really be helping you to not only service the internal needs, but also the community, and developing those relationships with the ad clubs in New York and the 4As and the AAF. And, we can go on and on and on, right? The T. Howard Foundation, it's just so many programs. And that's just the, and those, again, I'm specifically very well versed in what the African American talent pipeline looks like when we talk about HBCUs. But I also know that those programs also exist in every community for everyone. And we're talking about a time now that we need to look at what those other communities are doing as well, and connect and create those pipelines to then source, I say, talent that's prepared and ready to think about making that next move into this industry. Because we just don't have, I feel like we don't have them readily available in the pipelines.
Yeah, I agree. Arnicia, I'm going to go back to my 3 things, and you were talking internally, and you mentioned one key thing is like, sometimes everybody's not looking for that money, and they're wondering where you're offering me money now, but where were you a few years ago? And sometimes it's really about the development opportunities, right? Internally, and how do you make people feel valued, and that they're treasured, and that they're a valued, I guess, team member. What have you seen have been some transformational things, or what recommendations do you have for internal protection of talent?
Yeah, I mean, I believe leaders have to do better with having those.
Is Arnicia frozen?
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I believe.
Can you hear Arnicia? Because I think she's frozen for me. Is she frozen for you guys?
I can hear her.
Huh. I cannot hear her.
Oh, wow. Can you hear me now? Okay. So I think it's important.
That's weird. I can't hear her. So go ahead, Arnicia. I can't hear you, but go ahead.
Okay.
Keep talking, and then maybe one of the other team members will give me a thumbs up to say she's done. Okay. Go ahead.
Again, leadership, right? I think that's very important, because a lot of times companies feel like a lot of things fall on HR. It is HR's responsibility for everything. However, it is the leader's responsibility to have conversations with their employees. And even with the leaders, sometimes companies don't have the right leaders in the right positions. And so therefore that is a conflict. But if leaders are having the conversations with their staff, with the employees, then the employees have an understanding of their growth potential and where they can go. If they don't have the potential at all, I will say one of the companies that I worked with, recently at WPP, they are good with looking internally, right? I can say that I've seen it. And then for me, I was very intentional about coming into this industry. As Ericka mentioned, we're both from the entertainment and music industry. And so I was very intentional with coming into this particular industry because I felt and seen the lack of diversity. So my thought was, hey, come over here. You can actually help bring in talent that look like you. And that was something that I did. And also I was the person that, can have the conversations with the talent that look like me. At first I felt a way of bringing in more Black people because I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm the only one bringing in Black people. So I started to feel bad, but then I said, you know what? Why do I feel bad? They don't feel bad when they do it. So why should I? And so, it felt like I was the only one. And so what I did was I changed the way we started recruiting, meaning we had to have a slate of 50% Black BIPOC slate for hiring managers. And then that way you have a smaller percentage of having the unconscious bias, right? Because you have the people right here. So who are you going to choose? So I think for me internally, I've always kind of been that spokesperson for everyone. And sometimes it helps when you have the support of a chief people officer or a head of HR when you're looking for those internal promotions, when you're looking for career development. And a lot of times people are scared to ask for more money because this is their livelihood. This is how they eat. They don't want to disrupt their family, their household. And so a lot of times people just sit there and wait until a company is going to give them something. But that doesn't always happen. So what I've been doing is teaching people how to ask for what they want and what they need to survive. So yeah, a lot of the internal work is definitely it's hard work, but it can be done. And I'm always a fan of internal mobility is what I would call it. But sometimes, people have to go. It's okay. When they've made it to that top and there's nowhere else to go, and the only way you're going to grow is if your boss leave, sometimes it's okay for them to leave. But I would say, try to look internally, especially if you have if you work with a big organization, and it's okay to leave if it's nothing there, but do not let a company keep you from moving.
I love that. I love when you talk about educating people to know how to speak for themselves, and because a lot of people just don't even, especially if you've never, there's so few people in this industry of certain groups that they feel like if they disrupt the boat, right, that they're going to somehow speak up for everyone, let down everyone, and then be let go or thrown under the bus. So there really is that sense of oppressed voice.
Yes.
for fear. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I try, and Ericka, you spoke about starting in high schools, and I am in Washington, D.C., and that's something that I've been doing for years, is going into high schools, just having those conversations, because unfortunately, everyone who leaves high school is not going to college, right? And it doesn't mean that they don't have the skills too, because you can train a lot of those coming right out of high school. So I've started there as well to say, hey, if you don't make it to college, or you can't afford to go to college for whatever reason, there's still things that you can do. And Ericka, we know this from working in entertainment. I think on the agency side, at first, it to me, I think it was a requirement that everyone had a bachelor's degree or some sort of degree. But I think now people are changing the requirements, which I think is really good. And so now it opens up for a different type of talent now to get into these places where they couldn't get in before. So starting in high school, I think is very important. Just having those conversations, because they don't even really know what jobs are out here. They only know from what their mom and dad and grandparents have instilled in them. And so a lot of times those kids, they don't know. And I always give an example of, the guy who is the cameraman's assistant on an NBA game holding the cord. They don't know that guy makes $150 an hour for holding the cord, running behind the camera, right? So it's a lot of these non-traditional jobs out here that I would like these young kids to know about. And that is something that I try to do my best in teaching them when I go into these high schools.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I believe connecting and, I apologize for the technical difficulty in talking over Arnicia. I had no idea.
It's okay.
But if we talk about sort of the protection of the talent, and and I don't know if you mentioned doing some exit interviews and figuring out what people are needing when they leave, or why did they leave? Did you touch on that a little bit?
No, I didn't, but that is a good one, because that is why we have these exit interviews, so we can do better and so we can figure out why people are leaving. And I would say, for me, it definitely has been a lot of not having a career path, not having the growth, within the organization. And a lot of times it is because of the money too. A lot of people leave because of money, as well. So I'm not gonna sit here and say that that's not one of the reasons, because that is one of the top 3 reasons that people do leave. And the third, I would say, is because of the manager, because a lot of companies will allow the employee to leave, but will do nothing when it comes to the manager, who was just a really good project manager. But because that project manager was so good, they promoted this manager to a people's manager, but has never had any people management training. And so that is the third reason why people leave. So those are the 3 reasons, Adrienne.
I think that's something critical, because I've heard, about what do we tell the talent internally, that if you are in a toxic environment, if you are in a position where your manager is bad, what can you do to make sure that you're protecting yourself as an individual? Is there a reporting program in place? That you can start a file, like a file is started on you as an individual. Are organizations thinking about that in terms of protecting their employees, of giving them a safe space that's not like a random hotline, that they could start saying, this is what's happening to me ahead of time before they get to the evaluation stage and there's nothing that they can do? Are your organizations looking into things like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of these organizations, though, Adrienne, have that anonymous hotline number, and employees are over it. They don't even believe that it's anonymous, right? They don't trust it, right? They don't trust it at all. Along with, in full transparency, along with HR, a lot of employees don't trust HR. And so that's one of the number one things that I try to do when I start with the organization, is start to have these conversations with employees to build that trust with them. Because, my motto is, listen, whatever you say to me is between you and I, unless it's jeopardizing your health or it's jeopardizing the business. And if that is the case, I will come to you and say, hey, I have to share this information with whether it's your manager or the CEO. But other than that, the conversations are between us. And I think that is something that companies really have to do a better job at, allowing those conversations to stay between the employee and their HR representative. And documentation is very important. I mean, I've been in some serious legal, issues when it comes to organization. And if the employees have the documentation, I don't care if you respond back per our conversation. You guys know how that email starts: per our conversation, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That is very important. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be that much. You can keep a notepad to just say, around March 2020, this is what happened. This is my understanding. It's just some sort of documentation, and that's for the employees. And also, if you have an employee who's not performing either, as a manager, it is your responsibility to have the conversations and to document things too, because what a lot of companies do is have these 1 year reviews, right? You are supposed to have ongoing conversations with your employees, so your employees are not shocked when you tell them they're not performing. And if you having a conversation 1 time a year, then what do you expect? You haven't told this employee anything. So that's why they're underperforming, because 1, you're not talking to them to have a conversation. So they don't even know what they're supposed to be doing. So it's good to have these conversations. I say at least quarterly conversations, if not meeting with your people, your entire team once a month. But these conversations have to be had.
Sure. And with advertising, I agree with you. I would just say with advertising, it is not traditional to even have
conversations,
right? Until something's wrong.
Absolutely.
So a lot of the companies don't even have an annual or any thing, but that doesn't mean you don't. So what we tell people, and I'm going to come close because right now I'm not working for any organization, so I can say some stuff that other people can't say. It needs to be litigious. That's my word for the year. And Adrian is probably like, oh dear, litigious. You have to make sure that you're putting things in writing. Yes, work will always be contentious. HR works, they get their check from the same place you're complaining from. So let's just be honest and clear about that. No matter how big their heart is, they are there to protect the company. So you need to now protect yourself. So if there is I tell people when, I get a lot of challenges come across my desk, emails and things like that, and we give them a way to protect themselves. So the first thing you should do is have the conversations, and then to say follow up with an email. But if you're starting with a conflict, you're behind. So I like to tell people when they first come into an agency, right? If you don't sit and wait for somebody, right, to tell you how to do your job, because many times they won't in advertising. They're waiting for you to figure it out. So you also need to make sure you tell them how you want to be reviewed. I used to have a review with my boss, and that was the one thing I said, this is what I want to do while I'm at this company. Can we review how I'm doing and how I get to the next step? So you need to make that initiative for yourself, not wait for the HR team and the company to come around and say, we're going to be doing reviews this year. Because I've seen that happen 3 times in my career, and then the reviews never happen, or they happen once and they don't happen again. So you really have to know that you have to be responsible for your career. It's yours. I used to tell people, I already have a job. You need to check yours. That's relax. So it's important for you to be careful with that. So I would say do your own your stuff, and not just in the bad times, in the good times. Sometimes you forget all the good things you do with clients, those emails and things like that. Keep that. So when you do sit down and say, hey, whoever your senior manager is, can we have lunch? And it doesn't have to be like, I want to review so we can go over my progress at this place. Nothing like that. I like to have a check-in with you, like once a quarter, to see if I'm progressing or what can I do to get here. I want to have lunch with you then. Not if you're being aggressive. I'm going to avoid that lunch like the plague. So we really want to ask, take your career in your own hands. And like any relationship, and your job is a relationship. You spend a lot of time. Some people spend more time on their job than the people that are in their homes that they have relationships with. So you need to make sure that they're treating you well. And if, anytime somebody is cheating on you or they ain't paying no attention to you, you first say something, and then you may even write in a note or sit down and talk to them. And then after then you step. So it should be the same thing when it comes to a career, because it is a relationship that you have with the company. But let me be clear, it's your career. So don't make it someone else's problem, your career. That's yours, like your relationship. However, if you want to have a relationship with the company, you need to make sure that you keep making room to not only protect yourself, but give yourself the tools. So there was not 1 year I didn't have a review. It was called a lunch or a dinner. And we talked about the things that went well this year, the things that I can improve on. And I would ask them for, things that they would suggest, or who can they, couple me with so that I can get more experience on one thing or another. I didn't wait for the company to tell me that, because I'll tell you when they would have done it, like never. Because no one thinks of doing that for you because it's too busy. And it's not personal. It's just, when are you going to do it? When a campaign is about what the client wants, you know, you're just trying to keep up with the client request. So you've got to make sure you fit your needs in there in a way that's respectful to what you're doing with the job. But don't, like in a relationship, don't put yourself last, because at some point you're going to be so pissed off. You're going to be so angry that you're going to, that's when you blow up and you're yelling at people. And, you know, that was a time in advertising you could yell at people and throw things. I think now it's not acceptable.
It's frowned upon.
It's frowned upon. So now that you can't do an outlet with calling people all kinds of different names and storming out, you really need to like have, you know, these outlets where you're actually talking to people. And when I say be litigious, what I mean is write things down. If you see something, say something. And it may be something, you know, my mom would say, tell Jesus. And your email. Even if you write yourself an email about something that's happened because you don't know how to feel about it, write it down, take a day or a beat, and then talk to someone else about it and say, this happened, am I looking at it? But have a record of it. If it continues to happen, give me a call. There's a few people on this place you can call. I will share with you people that you can talk to, because you should, if it is a problem and there is, you know, it is something that should be reported, or that it's illegal, or, you know, it's litigious. The reason why it keeps happening is because we don't ever make it wrong. We just move. Change happens when people realize it's wrong, and usually they pay for it. And then all of a sudden we have a new policy. Yeah. So let's just make sure when, you know, people are doing stuff in the agency, it's not that you just get up and leave. I'm not telling you to stand up and fight. Please do. But if you don't, like, please write it down and protect yourself. And there's a lot of class action suits, I will say that are going on right now. There's probably somebody already speaking about that. And, you know, you just need to find out if your issue is something that is already being litigated on. So I'm going to say that. I don't want anybody else to get in that place, but we want to make sure that people know that, you know, like the Me Too movement, if somebody would have just said, you know, this is wrong, we would not have had a movement. When it got litigious and people were losing their jobs, people were getting sued, things changed, period.
Love, I want to say something about it before I forget, because I got a mature mind these days. And I don't want to forget. And you made a very good, you discern something that I think is key. As you mature in life, so does your thinking about yourself and your career. And when you start thinking about career versus job, that's when a lot of this information starts to make sense. That's also where the advantage of having a professional father or mother, that's where there's an advantage of those kids who are coming into the environment of a corporate America. Because I don't know about you, but I sat at the kitchen table every morning with a father who was facing these types of scenarios. And one of the things that he told me, to your point about writing things down, I've always known to have a folder. And the reason why you have a folder to talk about your accomplishments, your challenges, and a diary of run-ins, if run-in would be a different word, complications, right? Is because when you go to talk about a complication and you are emotional, the first thing you do is you forget. So if you go in with the date, the time, the situation, as you can remember it, a police report, if you will, of what happened and how it made you feel, you have much more leverage because people take you seriously, because to your point, you're taking yourself seriously. So my advice is threefold. For the company that is looking to be a competitive company and have best practices, the great thing about it is now we have more examples than before. We have many more examples of what a good workspace looks like. And therefore, I say do your work, because there are great people out here doing it. And two, and where a lot of people are rushing back to an office-centric model and they're still not understanding that their workforce today isn't interested in what happened before COVID. They've had a good taste of working from home. Productivity in people is up, not down. If anything, people want to go to the office so they don't work so much, to put some boundaries up. But I think the problem is not to look at it from a leader that feels like they can't trust their staff. I think by not really verbalizing what it is you need, and why you need your people to be in the office, then you leave it open to whether they are trusted or not. Some people need that flexibility to have the right ability to be able to earn a living for their family and to provide the best for the company. That's one. Two, see yourself in a career, not a job. Because when you start to see yourself in a career, not a job, then microaggressions and any other headwind that you encounter feels a little different, as they say in Twitter. It hits different, right? It hits different when this is your career and not your job, because a career is harder to develop, which means now you need to go out, you need to invest in your development, you need to invest in the people that you network with, because you're going to need to reach out to them to help give you advice in these situations. So that's that. And then last but not least, I feel like the industry itself is rife with change at this moment, but that window is quickly closing. And why? It's because ultimately we're in business. We're in business to make money. So we cannot lavish ourselves in this world of thinking that everyone's going to be empathetic and sympathetic to everything. Not if you're not making money. So moving diversity and inclusion, moving this development of talent into the business is where we're going, is where people are seeing the return on the investment. So that means that everybody needs to upskill themselves. What does that look like when I say make it a business-centric skill that you have? That means, as much as I would like to sit here and tell you, you might be the only one and what that feels like, I'd like to tell you that you are an asset. Make yourself an asset. Find where you are an asset. Become the expert of that asset and move forward, not backwards. Don't let anybody steal your cheese.
I love that. And that's a reference from Who Moved My Cheese? And Keep Your Sneakers by the Door. That is one of my favorite tiny books. And everybody should pick that up if you're thinking about forward mobility and trajectory of your career. Ladies, we are over time, but the conversation was so great. And I think we got some great tips, not only for individual talent and how to protect yourself, but also for organizations who are looking to do a better job at protecting their talent within. So the TT program, the Talent Protection Program panel was a success. Thank you so much. We'll have to invite you all back. This was like a prelude to Martha's Vineyard. I hope you'll all come out there and have a conversation with us as well. I'm sure it'll echo deeper with all the talent and that we'll have at the Vineyard. So thank you again, Arnicia Arrington, Ericka Riggs, Love Malone. You have given us many jewels to use, and we will continue to share. Hopefully everyone will stay with us. Our next panel coming up is about the AAPI community and building connections. I think there's a lot of similarities we'll hear in that conversation as we do in other Hispanic communities and African-American communities, the Black community, about allyship and relationship building. So stay with us then. This is day one of the Can Diversity Collective's Inkwell Beach virtual session. We will see you back at 1 o'clock. And thanks again to Arnicia, Ericka, and Love Malone and our TPP, Talent Protection Program panel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.